name's Lucy. I'm a dress and textile historian and PhD candidate at the University of Huddersfield. With the aid of some of the artefacts from within my own collection, today I'm going to offer a glimpse of some of the key features of the utility clothing scheme and the important role of manufacturers in the West Riding of Yorkshire in the scheme during the Second World War. On the 2nd of September 1941, the utility clothing scheme was introduced in Britain. Devised by the government, the scheme was enacted to avoid material shortage of clothing and textiles amongst the general population. With lessons learnt in the First World War and progressive difficulties in acquiring items of basic clothing for civilians, action was needed to ensure that stocks of clothing would be maintained throughout the duration of the war. Utility clothing, bearing the recognised CC41 label, was to be accessible to the whole population, no matter of class. It would be affordable and durable, and would ensure the availability of clothing through making the most of raw materials, while also serving to boost morale by creating fashionable garments that followed austerity regulations. The CC41 label, designed by Reginald Shipp, would serve as an identifying mark of these essential components of utility products. While the Board of Trade claimed at its introduction that the CC41 mark did not have a specific meaning, several differing explanations were asserted by the media, who conversely stated that the colloquial cheeses stood for either cloth control, civilian clothing, or controlled commodity, with the 41 standing for 1941, the year the scheme was established. The scheme expanded through its lifetime to include furniture, home textiles and other homeware such as crockery. To achieve its important aims, a central feature of the scheme was standardisation. Initially, the descriptive use of the word standard was met with concern amongst the public, many of whom reporting visions of a sort of civilian uniform. However, standardisation was only applied to methods of production, material makeup and garment construction, streamlining textile production, clothing manufacture and retailing. Utility aimed to be anything but standard in terms of its design, despite restrictions applied to manufacturing methods and pricing. It is here that utility can be cited as an early form of fashion democratisation, in that it was centrally devised to ensure that the working classes could access clothing which fulfilled important requirements, many of which are still applied today in the fashion industry. The Incorporated Society of London Fashion Designers, made up of 10 established designers including Hardy Amies and Norman Hartnell, were invited by the government in May 1942 to contribute a collection of utility clothing in order to ease growing concerns amongst manufacturers, retailers and, most importantly, the public, over the desirability of utility garments. Creating a range which could be manufactured across the country, their collection of 34 made-up prototype models included coats, suits, dresses and blouses for women in 8 variations, all of which were showcased to the press on the 22nd of September 1942, alongside garments modified from the original designs by manufacturers to show how they would look under mass production. Slight differences, if any, could be seen in some areas of construction in order to enable manufacture on a larger scale, and the collection was deemed a success. This designer collaboration proved to cement the scheme's role in the democratisation of fashion. Designation was offered to manufacturers who were producing the style and amount of utility clothing which the Board of Trade required to fulfil the clothing needs of Britain's civilian population on the 1st of June 1942. An essential works order was given to such factories, which resulted in secured access to materials, a stable labour force enabling the continuation of production, as well as the sale of all garments produced being guaranteed. Woolen and worsted fabrics made up a large amount of the cloth proposed to be handled under the utility clothing scheme, and as these were the main textile products of the established production centre of the West Riding, textiles manufactured and made up into ready-to-wear utility clothing in the county accounted for a large amount of both utility fabrics and finished utility garments for sale across Britain. Firms across the county were designated to create utility clothing, largely centring in Bradford, Halifax, Huddersfield, Hebden Bridge, Keighley and Leeds, amounting to some 215 of the total 1,006 designated clothing factories across these sites alone, all of which were producing a variety of different clothing products for the scheme. In analysing garments manufactured under the utility clothing scheme, we were able to see the impacts of wartime restrictions on construction, but also the fashionability of utility garments. For example, This early ladies' utility wool jacket, dating from between 1942 and 1945, was manufactured by Thomas Marshall and Company, a tailors and clothiers specialising in women's garments, under their trademark Malbec, in Leeds. The jacket features a single button fastening and 2 patch pockets, the sleeves having been let down at some point in its lifetime, and the wool fabric is woven of reds and blues to give an overall purple hue. The CC41 label is an indication of its early manufacture, as it does not feature any identifying specification numbers. Examination of different pieces of utility clothing illustrate the changes in restrictions, as well as the use of different manufacturing methods and alterations made to design and construction. The scheme itself has left a lasting legacy. The standardisation of sizing, something which was promoted by trade bodies in the West Riding, the declaration of material makeup of garments, and access to fashion at all levels of society are to name but a few important vestiges of the utility clothing scheme. The use of locally sourced quality materials and recycling are 2 elements of the scheme which are viewed with increasing importance in environmental sustainability within the fashion industry today. I hope this short analysis of one highly influential period in Britain's textile past will demonstrate how the aims and ideas of utility clothing scheme and the methods employed in the manufacture of CC41 clothing impacted the industry and society as a whole, and how reflections on the past can be used to inform future practice within the fashion industry. From a dress and textile historian's perspective.